We are live from chamber. Council, if you can please log into the January 15th eScribe meeting. It's the same meeting as yesterday's in eScribe.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this meeting back to order. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homelands, and acknowledge the diverse indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Lakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, now settlers from around the world. As I said yesterday in my acknowledgement, that acknowledging land is personal for all of us, from our personal perspectives and connections to this land. And for me, someone who have come from somewhere else and settled on this land, and this land has given me so much opportunity, I feel a sense of responsibility to continue to honor my commitment to ensuring that we're building a community for everyone, where everyone is able to thrive and live up to their fullest potential, and that we stand up and lift each other up. And that's a commitment that I'm pretty sure this entire city council has. So thank you so much for joining us again. We're going to proceed with our meeting that we left off from yesterday. And before I pass the chair on to Councillor Paquette, because I'm the mover of the motion. As a mover of the motion, I cannot chair the meeting. So Deputy Mayor, has to chair the meeting, and Councillor Paquette is the Deputy Mayor, so he will do that. But before I do that, I just want to make some opening remarks about how important this conversation is, and that City Hall is an open public legislative building. And each of us sitting here were elected by the residents of Edmonton and have a duty to represent them. Each elected official's opinions and thoughts matter, and each of us are given an opportunity to ask questions and speak openly. Some questions are to challenge ideas. Some questions are to clarify and seek information. And some questions are to explore solutions. Asking difficult questions and disagreeing helps us arrive at the best solutions we can. I hope that all my council colleagues feel comfortable to do their best work in a safe and secure environment. We owe it to Edmontonians and each other to listen to each other. I will ask that all of us in council chambers here today conduct ourselves with respect and compassion for each other. Overt, open reactions, both for or against, are not allowed. That's a procedure that we follow in the chambers for every meeting that we undertake. Unfortunately, if members of public cause, or anyone, even if we cause disturbance or interrupt the discussion today or any time, we will be asked to leave. If there continue disruptions, we may have to postpone the conversation to a later date. Nobody wants to wait for this important discussion. It's very important that we carry on with this discussion today. So let's do what we can to help each other today. Thank you so much for your engagement. We appreciate you being here today to watch this very, very important discussion. And we also acknowledge that there are people in this room who are dealing with trauma and grief. As council, it is our responsibility to ensure that we conduct ourselves in a safe and open manner. While this setting today is not designed to be a public engagement process, we still want to hear your voices. Please continue to contact my office, reach out to your counselor's office, and share your views. They're important to us, and we look forward to hearing them. I thank you each of you for attending today and invite you to listen as council continues the discussion in public. With that, I'm going to pass over the chair to Councillor Briquette.
I have the chair.
Councillor Paquette, if I might just step in just before you do roll call, if I just might give some emergency response and evacuation procedures for today.
Please do.
Thank you. In the event of an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery, so that is everyone seated behind me, take direction from security to evacuate. Council takes direction from myself to evacuate. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell. Take the stairs to ground level and evacuate the building through doors marked emergency exit and go to a muster point. Please do not take an elevator or walk through City Hall or through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility must immediately, with the aid of a monitor, proceed to the closest stairwell. The monitors for the persons with limited mobility will remain with them during an evacuation, and the fire department will evacuate the persons with limited mobility from the building. Please identify yourself to me if you require a monitor for limited mobility. If you at any point during this meeting require first aid, please speak with either myself or with a security guard. Thank you, Councillor Paquette.
Thank you. And I will now do the roll call. Councillor Wright.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Knack.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Principe.
Hello.
Hello. Councillor Stevenson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Tang.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mayor Sohi.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Councillor Hamilton.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Rutherford.
Hello.
Hello. Councillor Salvador.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Cartmel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Rice.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Councillor Jans.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we left off having returned from questions from in private, in camera, but we're back, and I will just have to ask Councillor Principe, are you on the board for questions?
I actually do have one question.
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paquette. I do have a question for Mr. Corbould. It has to do with declaring an emergency. I remember when we took our training, all of council had to do some training for emergency response. And during reading the emergency response activation, there were certain things that could be activated once a municipality declares an emergency. Would that happen in this instance?
Councillor, no, I think what you're referring to is what's called a state of local emergency, and I think the mayor's made it clear in his notification and in his motion that that's not what this is. This is declaring an emergency on homeless and houselessness. So it is not the state of local emergency that is under the legislation of the Alberta Emergency Management legislation. That's where different powers come into play.
Right. Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Thank you. That was my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will just check to see if there are any further questions from councillors. Going once, going twice. Okay. In that case, if there are no other questions, the time has come for councillors, if they wish to sign up to speak before we go to a vote. And I will watch the board to see if anyone cares to share their thoughts. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Oh, apologies.
My apologies. I had a look from down the way. I just wanted to, before we close up, I want to see if there is a will. It looked like I forgot about this. My apologies. A will to split elements of the vote. Is that still a request from any councillors? Okay, Councillor Hamilton, please go ahead. Oh, I thought you were saying yes, you.
Yes, to split. It's just it.
Okay, so there's a request to split items for separate voting.
Yeah.
Okay. Clerk, how, because there were 5 elements, how would it be best to proceed for clarity for you?
I'm going to suggest or recommend that council speak to the entirety of the motion, and then we can split it for voting purposes if that's
Perfect, that works for me.
makes sense on the council side.
Okay, all right. My apologies, Councillor Stevenson, please proceed.
No, thank you. You know, I want to start by thanking Mayor Sohi for bringing this motion forward. I really appreciate the thought and the intention and the actions that will come out of this. I'm supportive of declaring an emergency, and not because this is the type of emergency that can be fixed overnight, but because of the deep urgency of action that's needed. The number of Edmontonians who are without the housing that they need, without the supports that they need, is unacceptable. And where I take hope from is that we do have the solutions. Attachment 1 that's referenced in this motion outlines the things that we need to do, the things that we can do to address this. It can be solved when we have that will. And for me, declaring an emergency helps to focus that will and ensure that we're all moving in the same direction. It is also a way to amplify and underscore the critical need for a response from all of our partners and from our own organization. I'm pleased that we will be stepping up, as set out in number 5, with what we as a municipality can do, and very much look forward to bringing other parties together as outlined in Action 3. I think, you know, as challenging and as complex as these conversations may be, I do come back to the fact that there is extremely broad agreement that we need to be doing more. We need to be doing better as a society, as an entire community. Having these tables with a chance to learn from one another, coordinate our resources, for me is the great opportunity. I will leave it there and just say thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and encourage my colleagues to support.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I too appreciate the mayor's motion here and do agree that we are in an emergent situation and make this declaration of emergency to deal with our housing and houselessness. I believe the emergency highlights the importance that these tangible steps that we can take moving forward will help all Edmontonians and let Edmontonians know that we are taking this action. I think it'll help to stabilize some of the housing beyond just the emergency shelter spaces. And as we look towards more affordable housing options for people, I think it'll also help to keep people from entering into houselessness. So, and by taking a more, I think, creative approach by engaging with all various stakeholders, whether it be business, whether it be mutual aid organizations, other social agencies, I think this is a creative way to approach the situation. So thank you again, and I will be voting in favor of all parts of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to begin by recognizing all of the community leaders, advocates, youth, elders, and others who are in attendance today and who joined us yesterday in chambers, many of whom have been working directly with unhoused neighbors and serving in this space for years. Also want to recognize the people who are no longer able to join us because of our society's collective failure to support them and care for them when they needed it. I know a lot of people in this room have been calling for today's declaration for a long time, and I want to thank you for your commitment to building an inclusive and compassionate Edmonton for all of us. As I mentioned yesterday, I will be supporting this motion. It is an emergency. It has been an emergency for years now. This council has taken numerous actions to address the housing and homelessness crisis, ranging from significant investments in affordable housing and supportive housing, as well as bridge housing, investments in hygiene hubs, municipal drug response, 24/7 crisis diversion, really starting to step outside of our own jurisdiction and fund supports that do fall within the responsibility of other orders of government. We know that municipalities alone are unable to deliver the degree of action and the scale of resourcing required to address this emergency. And I think one of the important purposes behind declaring this emergency is that Edmonton is now standing with other Canadian municipalities who have done the same. My hope is that adding Edmonton's voice to this national conversation will garner the attention it deserves from other orders of government who, quite frankly, are in a far better position to meaningfully address this systemic issue than we are.
Thank you.
I'm not quite done.
Please continue. Sorry.
Thank you. Reflecting on some of the comments I heard throughout this discussion, which has been, I think, really, really meaningful. There was some concerns about whether this is really addressing the acute need that we're seeing today in our communities or the long-term systemic issues of houselessness. But I think turning that into an either-or conversation, it takes away from the inherent interconnectedness between the two. Because what we're seeing today in our communities, it's a symptom of a failing housing system. And when I think about the urgency of this emergency, not only has the number of unhoused Edmontonians doubled since the onset of the pandemic, but the rising cost of living and the vacancy and rental projections from CMHC are extremely strong signals that an even greater number of Edmontonians will be precariously housed or at risk of falling into homelessness in the coming months. Now, I'm prepared to leverage even more dollars towards this as we move forward, and I think we need to. Which is why I'm particularly keen on seeing the results of point 5 of this motion by the end of the month, where we'll be able to have a list of immediate actions and steps that we can take, both independently and in partnership with other organizations and orders of government. And while not the topic of discussion today, I know a lot of people are calling for council to look at our response to encampments, and I'm prepared to look at further changes to our approach as we work towards continually improving that to ensure that we are always centering dignity, safety, and well-being. And then just to close, also want to recognize the folks who have been writing in, taking the time to speak to me at events, and really engaging on this issue, not over the last few weeks, but not only over the last few weeks, but for years now. Your advocacy and commitment to our houseless neighbors is part of the reason that we are here today having this conversation, and I think that your compassion and care really does embody the type of city that we're trying to build. So thank you for that. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Rice, can you take the chair, please?
Yes, I have a
Hold
chair.
on. Before that, Councillor Rutherford, please go ahead. Oh, and Councillor Knack, there you are. Go ahead, Councillor Knack. If you guys are thinking of speaking, please just go on the board instead of right at the last minute, second.
Sorry, I'm frantically jotting a few words down, and I was having password issues. That's why I just got in. Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Thanks for this discussion, Mayor Sohi. I'm reflecting on the conversation yesterday and over the last few weeks, and I think a lot of this caught up in point 2 around the need to declare a housing and homelessness emergency, and specifically the need to do this at a special council meeting. Realistically, I actually think this entire motion could have been made at yesterday's committee meeting as a subsequent motion to the updated affordable housing strategy. And I think by calling a separate meeting, it has created a bit of confusion, if I'm being very frank, is in that the folks who've come into the gallery today and yesterday, and I think we're looking, as other councillors mentioned yesterday, for a conversation more around encampments and shelters and not around housing. So separating out that, I mean, I can't change that. We're here today debating a motion at a special council meeting. And while I think it would have been perfectly valid and made actually maybe even more sense at committee, we're here today, and so I'm just going to talk about it now. And so as I reflect on it, I'll support all parts of it. Even just in some of the previous comments, I think back to summer of 2020 when council at the time, we had seen some success in a reduction in the total number of people experiencing houselessness. And yet, as the pandemic came, there were impacts that were starting to grow and grow and grow. And so we made a decision in summer of 2020 to do something that we actually hadn't done before, which is really get heavily invested in 24/7 permanent supportive housing, and actually built that. And we actually took a risk at that point in time. We built it without any knowledge as to if the provincial government was going to fund the operations, because there was no commitment to that yet. But we knew that there was a need to start down this path and to start addressing something that was growing even at the beginning of 2020. And I know throughout those years, in the past 4 years, we have regularly called the housing challenges before us. I think we've used the term crisis. I think the term emergency has come up quite a few times. I think I've used the term crisis more and more. I sort of view them as interchangeable. And there is a need for more action. So setting, and I appreciate the frustration that some will have about setting aside the housing and encampments, which is actually not what we're talking about today, even though I think a lot of people want to be talking about that today. When I look at this solely through a housing lens, I continue to think we are in a urgent situation today, just like we were 4 years ago. Why it might be of value to then use this term is to bring together all orders of government, because, giving both the provincial government and the federal government credit, it's not like there hasn't been an investment in housing. The province, this current provincial government's involved heavily investing in recovery beds. The federal government's invested a lot in the rapid housing initiatives. And yet I think the challenge, and part of why maybe this could help us, is that I don't feel like we're coordinated. We hit our target the last 4 years, from 2019 to 2022, and the number of units we wanted to see built, but that was done in a piecemeal way. We got money at different times at random through different programs, but we just sent a strategy to council next week, which will suggest we need 1,400 to 1,700 units of 24/7 supportive housing. And that is for the hardest to house, and the hardest to house are typically the ones who are living out in encampments and on the streets right now. And what I don't know is how we're going to get to that yet. I do believe both the province and the federal government want to get us there, but I think we need to really sit down and actually have a clear, detailed plan and this might be able to hopefully bring those bodies together in a way that we haven't seen over the previous 4 years, where it was done in a bit more of a piecemeal setup. So again, we can, I was going to be a little more challenged about the use of the word emergency, but we've always been in an emergency. It's just a matter of how do we coordinate that energy between the other orders of government and our agencies who are serving all of these individuals in a way to actually take quick action. Like, we need to build these 1,400 to 1,700 units in the next 4 years. It needs to happen right away. So maybe this will get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, I've been thinking about what to say and all of the discussion that we've had leading up to and culminating in this meeting. And I think, 5 minutes is so limiting. There's so much I could say on this item, but time is a factor. So I think I'm going to focus on the heart space instead of the head space. Not that I'm not making a rational decision, not that the head space hasn't guided what my vote will be on this, but I think what's calling me right now is to speak from the heart. And I'm going to start with some numbers for my colleagues who are contemplating maybe not supporting the word emergency. We received a report earlier to council that the average life expectancy of a homeless person in Canada is 39 years. To give context to this, the life expectancy in Alberta is about 81.5. The total drug poisoning deaths in Edmonton last year in 2023 were quarter 1, 150. Quarter 2, 147. Quarter 3, 195. Unhoused Edmontonians are 454 times more likely to die of drug poisoning than housed people. Health officials saw a 10-year high in amputations needed because of frostbite. Alberta Health Services reported a 127% increase in amputations due to frostbite between 2021 and 2022. The latter part of 2023 was this winter saw 18 amputations. That's just a few snippets. We have received as a council over 40 memos on houselessness since I've been elected in 2021. I could literally sit here and read you stats like this that are completely heartbreaking, and as a human, as an individual, break my heart every single moment of every single day that I sit in this space and I say, I wish I could do more. So why now? Because we need help. Straight and simple. This council, this government cannot do it alone. And I'm so heartened that we have had a great conversation with the government this morning, and there is collaborative movement. I'm so heartened that all of the conversations that have happened, but at the end of the day, yes, could this have been done through a committee? Absolutely. But I completely support the mayor's approach because we needed to have this conversation. We needed Edmontonians to know that we care, and we needed Edmontonians and the rest of the country, the federal government, the provincial government, community serving organizations to understand that we need help. We want to find solutions. So I will wholeheartedly be supporting the mayor's motion on this item. I hope my colleagues do too. I get that, there's criticism out there that this is symbolic. It's not symbolic because there's actions that are matched with this. And I can commit to you personally that I will not sleep if there are no actions attached to this. But to me, this second point, this declaring a housing and houselessness emergency is saying, we need help. We want to work with you, whether it be provincial, be it federal, be it people that are out there seeing the pain every day. I want to work with you. So that, to me, is what this message is. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward. And thank you to everyone who has put pressure on us, that continues to put pressure on all orders of government to be accountable to the people that we serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. I want to thank my colleagues for speaking from the heart on this. This is, as demonstrated by the amount of people who have shown up in the last 2 days to hear what council has to say on this declaration. I see and hear that the issue of housing and houselessness is important to Edmontonians. What I struggle with in this motion is that point 2 is a non sequitur to points 3, 4, and 5. That I think a lot of people came here in the past 2 days expecting to see urgent action related to the issues we are seeing on our streets today. That when you walk out the doors of City Hall, you are confronted by. And there is nothing on this list that will change that. And it will not change that for the next 18 months. I cannot support the declaration of an emergency here. I can support everything else, but I cannot support that because it's misleading. And I think that it runs the risk of desensitizing us to what emergencies mean when your government declares an emergency. I do want to say I do believe we are in a housing crisis. We have a housing crisis in Edmonton. We have a housing crisis across Canada, and it is crushing the dreams of young people. It is robbing people of the promise of prosperity that this country makes. I do not think Edmonton is unique that way, unfortunately. But that is a somewhat separate issue to the encampment issue, to the very urgent issue relating to people who are in medical distress on our streets and who are vulnerable. This does not impact that. I am heartened by what we heard this morning. You can't say too much more about it, but I think that we are headed in a direction where I hope the people who are in this room will see that action. The rest of the points I can and will support, in part because one is a very thinly veiled municipal development corporation. This item 4 essentially is looking to build up something that I've long thought the city should be in the business of doing, which is finding a way to incentivize the use of our land to build more housing. We need an extraordinary amount of housing built, not just in Edmonton, but across Canada in the next 10 years. And we need everybody to come together to do that. But it also means that this will be well outside the actual span of control of government. When you're talking about the scale of housing that we need to build and the spectrum of housing that we need to build, we will need the private sector, we will need banks, we will need we'll need our post-secondary institutions. We need all of society to help us fulfill that promise of housing. And I think that conversation is being had. And I was a little bit late coming in my last meeting, maybe I'll add, I think all of us bank with one of the top 5 banks in Canada, RBC, TD, whatever. And or maybe if you're lucky enough, you pay into a pension fund. I urge each and every one of you to ask your bank who they loan money to build housing. Because one of the top complaints I hear is that there is housing being built in this country and it does not get built in Alberta because money does not get loaned here. If you have a pension fund, I would ask where they are allocating that money, because pension funds are some of the biggest landlords in this country and they are not buying in Alberta. So if there is no money to build the housing and there is no one to buy the housing so that people can live in the housing, then there is no housing. And if we are talking about building millions of units of housing in this country, including tens of thousands in this city, we need everyone, including the financial institutions where we park our cash to be part of that conversation. So with that, I will support everything except item 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Jones.
Yeah. In some ways, I think the motion and calling the emergency has already been successful in that I'm hearing it echoed out in the streets, talking to constituents, my phone calls, people calling my office saying, you know, given that we're in an emergency, like people, I really feel there is a tangible, palpable kind of a mobilization, if you will, of people, of media, of others. The fact that we had, you know, every media outlet in the city here yesterday following this topic. And for me, I think I'm a big believer in harm reduction. I think we have stated that the whole just say no to drugs doesn't work, that we need multiple approaches here, that harm reduction is essential. And so too with the opioid poisoning or drug crisis, that we also need a harm reduction approach when it comes to housing. And that means a spectrum. That means wherever people are sleeping, that we try and make it safer, whether it's encampments, whether it's shelters, whether it's bridge housing, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we're trying to meet people where they're at, build trust, show respect, and work with people to address their unique circumstances that brought them to where they are and the needs that they're facing. That's the long-term path to success. You can't just beat your way to compliance. So we here are looking at this motion, and I think Councillor Rutherford said it so eloquently about, you know, one amputation is too many, one overdose poisoning is too many, one person freezing to death in the valley is too many, and when I look at the government's reaction in the past to other crises in Alberta, be it the wildfires, be it the flood, others, I mean, the fact that we've had 1,411 people die last year from drug poisoning in Alberta, entirely preventable, this to me is an emergency, and it just has not, and even if the Premier knows all of this, and even if the Mayor knows all of this, my hope is that the people who call my office, and I have this conversation sometimes 10 or 20 times a week, somebody calls and says, why is there an encampment? What is going on? What is driving this? What do you mean there's people being discharged from prison into homelessness? What do you mean there's people being discharged from hospital into homelessness? What do you mean that rent is going up 25-50% and wages are stagnant? Like this motion and the attention that it's driven already is a chance to have a frank conversation about, in 2019 we're at 1,500 homeless. In 2023 we're at 3,000 homeless. By 2027, are we going to be at 6,000 homeless? Or is this the new future? Is this doubling every provincial term now, every 4 years, because we are not addressing the root causes and the drivers? We know higher rents mean more tents. We've seen this over and over. We know that stagnant wages. We know that fixed income folks who are on AISH, and I mentioned yesterday the youth aging care. If we're not taking care of people, that those 47,000 people who are on the brink right now in core housing needs, they too could become the next folks camping. So, is this an emergency? Absolutely. Are these other components necessary? Yes. Would I like Councillor Salvador? I'm very interested to see what item 5 is. I know we've committed already 183 million. I know we collectively need to get to that 15.4 billion over 10 years. But are there measures right now that we can do, police, fire, transit, anywhere else, just to ease suffering and to make life slightly more comfortable for people in need? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Now, I will mention once more, and I wasn't going to mention it, but now I have to. There was a boo before. I don't even care if you're saying boo earns. We will not have those kinds of outbursts. And then there was, after Councillor Jans's comments, more outbursts. We will not have that. And I'm sorry to sound so firm, but we must respect the decorum of the proceedings. Everyone needs to be able to speak their mind, and everyone else deserves to hear it, devoid of any kind of influence. This is very serious. These are serious matters. You're not here because it's not unserious. And if you do want to make an outburst, and if you do make that outburst, you will be asked to leave, and you will be escorted out if you do not leave on your own accord. I hope that is clear. Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the mayor for putting forward this motion. Many thanks to those who have participated very passionately, enthusiastically in this conversation, whether you were on the ground or in this room or lengthy phone calls or emails. All of those matter. I will be supporting the motion today, and I want to maybe break it down a little bit. You know, at this point, my colleagues have already alluded to it. It's public knowledge that City Council has met with members of the government of Alberta. And for me, coming out of this meeting, I want to acknowledge that work is underway to address immediate needs. And our partners in other orders of government are providing support, and I think that's a good sign. However, as productive as the conversation we have had, addressing the fire in front of us doesn't negate the fact that through a pandemic, the number on the by name list managed by Homeward Trust for those living rough and without stability has nearly doubled, with many people going unreported. The flow of people falling into homelessness is not slowing down and grows each year. Addressing the fire in front of us doesn't negate the fact that we continue to have growing number of households who are in need of core housing. Currently, 1 in 8, and just to add some more numbers, 1 in 8 households are in core housing needs, 1 in 4 renter households, and 1 in 3 Indigenous households. We have over 46,000 households in core housing needs. It is this growth that's concerning, and at the city, we have tapped into our tools, our legislative authorities. We have even took on additional responsibilities, like many municipalities have. We have been calling our partners, other orders of government, to focus on housing solutions with urgency. It is by far the single biggest issue our city has been grappling with. So if this is not an emergency, I don't know what it is. These are some strong first steps being put forward in this motion. And we've also been talking about the affordable housing strategy discussed yesterday morning, albeit quite rushed. And I think it's worth checking it out. There's some really great information about how we arrived at this point. Decades of policy decisions, and we can even pinpoint specific actions, specific decisions by specific governments. But here we are now. It is all of our issue. And so for points 3, 4, 5, I have some concerns, I have questions, I have some ideas, and I imagine everyone here does, and I will just maybe highlight some of mine. They may not be perfect, but they will get us going, and this discussion here will get us going with greater urgency. I think for number 3, I think convening is great, and we need that table. We've seen what fruitful conversation can look like when everyone is at the table, like we did this morning. However, I would just urge, Mr. Mayor and the city manager, as your team plans this, that we not only get our government and institutional leaders to the table, but we also not leave behind other leaders, informal leaders, those at the front line, those directly who will be impacted by this discussion. And again, I want to focus a little bit on the importance of centering this conversation on those who are directly impacted. We know this from research, we know this intuitively, we know this from our own experience. Purpose, connection, community matters to people. And so I hope for items 4 and 5 and whatever steps we take forward, we involve people. We know stories, we know the research. I worry about constantly going back and constantly asking people to tell their stories over and over again. There's a lot we already know. Let's take what we already know and implement them and involve people directly. And so for this task force, the structure and how we approach this matters to set it up for success. We've had many task forces in the past, and I hope we're not going to be bogged down by governance or meetings around in circle. I have heard my colleagues mention a municipal corporation. That's one structure. In my mind, I have a bit of a social innovation lab, but that's neither here nor there. And I hope those who will be leading on this will be open to some feedback that I'm happy to share later. And I think finally, for that final point, when this report returns in January, January 30th, apologies, you know, I hope that we really, I encourage administration to really take, you know, get to yes, can do, what, let's not be hampered by the restrictions, and let's think about possibilities. And I very much look forward to that conversation. So at this point, you know, I know we can't get to ideal, but we can continue to do better. Thank you for putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Cartmel.
Great, thank you, Councillor Paquette. So first of all, I just want to state for the record, yesterday I perhaps overly characterized the gathering in the room as only interested in the encampment issue and not in the housing issue, and I was received some criticism for that. And so I apologize if I offended anybody by characterizing it only in that way, or saying that anybody present here today is only interested in the encampment issue and not in the housing issue. It wasn't my intent to alienate anybody or to offend anybody. For the most part, I base those comments on all of the comments I've received today. And I'm fully and completely aware, having sat here for better than 6 years, about the connection between housing and where the lack of housing results in homelessness. I know that. But for the sake of the conversation today, similar to Councillor Knack, I need to separate the two for a moment. The reason I was characterizing the conversation yesterday and the gathering yesterday as primarily concerned with encampments is because since the beginning of December, all I have heard about in this context is about encampments. Whether we should be doing what we were doing or we shouldn't be what we were doing, or that we're allowing them to exist, all of that. Everything was about encampments. I have not heard one word about HomeEd's intent to build affordable housing in Ogilvie Ridge. And there's 400 very motivated residents that want to tell me all I want to hear about that project. I have not heard at all about the Savita complex that in the ward that I represent. I have not heard a word about housing. Everything I have heard has been about camps and the need to do something urgently and emergent, in an emergent way, about camps. So that is where I made my comments yesterday, and that is what I'm taking to heart today. My duty as a councillor is to take that input, for sure. It's to take input from administration and receive those reports. It is to participate and listen to the discussion and debate at council. But it's also to accept and consider the advice we get in private. Now, we have had 2 two-hour sessions in private over the last 2 days. And my expectation is that over the course of time, the content of those conversations will come to the public realm. But I'm not allowed to talk about those things in the next 2.5 minutes. But I do have to consider the import of the information we have received. The word emergency has connotations. It has impact. It has meaning. And part of that meaning is that immediate action will be taken for a discrete period of time to a particular place, to a particular action, to fill a particular need. None of the rest of this motion speaks to that. None of this motion speaks to the actual, literal, urgent thing we're talking about in the community for the past 5 weeks, and that is what we're doing about encampment. So, do we have an urgent need to do stuff about housing? Absolutely. Do we have an urgent need to talk to other levels of government? Absolutely. I recently heard about the level of funding that the Inuk Cree Nation receives from the federal government in terms of housing. It's ridiculous. Is there an urgent need to talk about that? Yes. But there is nothing in the definition of emergency that says, go form another task force, to have another meeting, to create another set of terms of reference, and pick a meeting place and order the lunch and have a conversation about who's going to pick up the phone and talk to the minister in Ottawa. Someone just needs to pick up the phone and talk to the minister in Ottawa. And there doesn't need to be a declaration of an emergency to do that. But the risk of just, I could be criticized for all of this, and someone could say, well, just declare the emergency. It's obvious that it's a problem. But to do that could have unintended consequences that would have negative consequences on the fiduciary responsibilities of the corporation of the City of Edmonton. That doesn't mean I don't agree that there's an urgent need. That doesn't mean that I don't agree that we do have, quote unquote, an emergency that's unfolding. But that does mean that I got to be careful about the language I support based on the advice that I have received. And I appreciate that some are speaking from the heart and speaking emotionally. Here's what happens though. That emotion wears off. And in a few days, we're faced with the reality of having made a decision emotionally that has impact that we then have to deal with. So I would rather not do that. So I support everything here, but I will not support the declaration of an emergency today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Chair Paquette. I will not be supporting number 2, declaring housing and houselessness emergency. The reason is that if the declaration itself resulted in meaningful action, then I would support it. However, it does not. It's just words. It does not activate any levers, and I clarified that with administration. It does not activate any levers that council could use to address the crisis. I appreciate the amendment that Councillor Rutherford made to item 4, because now I can support that. And the other items that I see are supported. They're actions, they're meaningful actions. Those I can support. That is what I want to see. More action, less talking, more action. And that's what those other items are doing. And that's why I can support those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm almost the last councillor to speak. Usually I'm not emotion, but right now I'm getting into a little bit of emotion. So I agree everything my colleagues said, and then from their heart, and from their perspective, from their point of view, how they represent their constituents. I just want to say, first of all, I do not take this as a political topic. This is not. This is a people's life. This is about how us as a council, as the leaders, and also all the Edmontonians, we care about people's life. So somebody asked me why you did put any comments on social media. You did not respond media's request to comment on this topic because I do not want to get into the political topic. This is a topic, and from all of you here, and also from everybody who are not here, and also from everybody sitting here, to care about the people's life. So for me, I want to share with you, I never share this publicly. This is the first time I shared. I was working in houseless prevention branch in government of Alberta as public servant. I was manager there. And for my daily work there, I worked really, really hard with many, many employees in government of Alberta, try to find the solution to support our vulnerable populations. Every day I get home, I ask myself, what solution could be effective to really address this issue? Because we have so many argument points about between the intervention and prevention, between address the symptoms and address the root cause. And that type of argument points happened every day in my daily work. And then, but I feel bad. I could find the solution, and for many years, and then to address that issue. And then there are so many hard work peoples, like you say, in government of Alberta. And after I become city councillor, I stayed here over 2 years. You can say from city administration's group, how many hours they put on, how much hard work they put on, try to find a different program, different services to address this. But then right now, we get to the point, I want to say, This is the third time as a counselor, first-time counselor, I saw our Edmontonians, how many Edmontonians come to chamber. This is the third biggest time I saw you come to chamber because you care about this. Because you looking forward, you looking for to counsel as a leader to find real solution, to address this, to really support the people right now on the street struggling and for their lives. That is how we care about. So for me, and then if we cannot find a solution, no matter how much policy we put in place, no matter how much program and how much resources we put in place. But the bottom line is how we support those people's life on street. I know, and then I heard a different perspective and from my colleagues regarding the word of emergency. But for me, I want to put that wording beside me to look at, is this motion will help us to find a different solution? Because we tried so many solutions in the past many years. It's not just we are doing right now. We already did so many. But why we still have problem in front of us? Is this solution give us opportunity and to looking for different solution? Say, we can find different solution and really support the people struggling on the street right now. Housing is one solution. Is there any other type of solutions? And then I can see this joint effort and then cross the three-level government is there. But as a city, what can we do to really push this further to looking for the different solution? So that is something I ask my question myself over and over. Also, and I have my constituents contact me, say.
Councillor Rice.
Okay, I'm time out.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Thank
I will stop here.
Okay. Do you mind taking the chair?
Yes, I take the chair.
Thank you. And of course, Mayor Sohi will be taking the last word. So there's not really a lot to add to what has already been said, except that I am uncomfortable being in this position of having to look at this motion and consider the fact that without point 2, we could still do all the things in this motion. And God willing, we will. One of my concerns about declaring as a municipality a housing and house emergency is because Ottawa has already done it. Toronto has already done it. And they have a housing authority, which we don't. We don't have that from the province. They have a housing authority. Have they fixed it? Has declaring a housing emergency helped them to fix things? I have to ask that question because how we use our words is really powerful, and if we use them incorrectly, that is powerful too. Hey, my ancestors have been in this emergency since the road allowance, since colonization. Of course we know what it is. Of course we know, and I worry that if we declare this, we let other governments off the hook. Because in the mayor's presentation, we saw the separations of the powers of government. Housing was not in the municipal list because it's not something that we actually have power over. We convene, we assist, we advocate, we enable other orders of government to build housing and to invest in housing. And sometimes we even spend property tax dollars to buy and provide below market housing, as with Home Ed, because we know that this is urgent. We know it's a crisis. And I don't want to be drawn into a political game where governments can excuse their inaction by pointing fingers at each other. I want everyone at the table willingly so that we know that we get willing work rather than grudgingly so we get inadequate funding. Now, my words actually don't matter to the outcome of this because if you've been listening, it looks like if people don't change their votes, we already know the outcome. But I have to make my position clear. I was told by some elders once, they said, you know, in that residential school, they had a lot of things in this big book of theirs that I disagreed with, but one thing I agreed with because my Muslim taught it to me. He said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I was like, what's that? He said, that's John chapter 1, verse 1. I was like, oh, okay. I said, what does that have to do with anything? He said, my Muslim taught me that the Creator gave all of us a gift of language. And that gift was so that we could speak reality into the world. He said, we've all been created. And so inside of us all is the gift of creation. And the way we use our words create our world. And so we must always be careful with how we use our words. Now this may sound like a semantic argument when we say, oh, declare emergency, don't declare emergency, but we already know what's at stake. And if we declare this, we are making a promise. We're making a promise that as a municipality, we're going to fix this. That's not a promise we can keep. We don't have the power. We don't have the authority. We don't have the budget. And that's the frustrating position that we're in. We rely, just as you rely, just as all people rely, on the provincial and federal government to step up to the plate. And if we vote for this, which sounds like we will, we are making a promise to all of you that we as a municipality are taking on a responsibility that we have no hope of ever fulfilling. We simply can't do it. It's like asking the community league to take over housing. They can't do it. This is based in laws that we don't have the authority to change. And that may not make sense to you because you don't have to deal with this every single day, butting your head against a brick wall as far as trying to negotiate with other orders of government. But we do. So I get the emotional argument for wanting to do this. And when council votes for this, and if they vote in the positive, hold this council to account for the promise they are making. Thank you.
Return Chair.
Mayor Sohi.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. I want to start by recognizing and thanking City Council colleagues as well as our administration for ensuring that our meetings over the past 2 years were productive and well organized. And I also want to thank the members of the public and advocacy groups for engaging on this issue and being here in person or online. Especially, I want to thank Kukum Kathy and elders who continue to bring peace and support to the community. You know, sometimes one catastrophic event can cause short-term catastrophic emergencies that require short-term interventions. But the genesis for this emergency started in 1990s when governments started divesting from investing in social, non-market supportive housing. And COVID really exposed how those underinvestments can have devastating consequences for people and the ability to have a place to call home. So this is not a new problem. This is an old problem, but it got to a point, if we don't take this seriously, if we don't treat this as a long-term emergency, more and more Edmontonians will fall through the cracks and become homeless. 25% of Edmontonians earn less than $45,000 a year. Further down, 3% Edmontonians, which is a large population among million population, 3% households, that earn less than $20,000. They're one check away from losing their housing. At one time, I was one of those Edmontonians. I could have ended up on the street, but community was there to support me, lift me up. And community each and every day lift each other up, even today. And your presence here speaks to that. But as a system, we are failing people. I appreciate that recently significant investments have been made by the federal government through Rapid Housing Initiative, Reaching Home Initiative, Housing Accelerator Fund. They're providing more housing. I deeply appreciate that provincial government through stronger foundations plan, allocating $9 billion in housing investment to provide affordable housing for 82,000 more households by 2031 in Alberta. Those are important investments that we need to recognize, and as a community we are making those investments as well. But the severity and the scale of the problem requires mobilization of the community. And I hear from business leaders, I hear from social sector, I hear from community leagues that we are all willing to step up. And this is an opportunity for us to do so. We need to engage Edmontonians in this. And I have already spoken with Minister Fraser about this, had a very productive meeting this afternoon with the provincial government on a separate matter, but I am confident that Minister Nixon and others will come to the table. We need to get Confederacy Treaty 6 involved in this as well, right? So with that, I encourage my council colleagues to support this and call what it is. This is an emergency. So thank you so much for council colleagues. Please vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please vote.
Just give us a moment while we get part one loaded for voting.
How are we doing? Oh, here we go.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that is carried. Now for point two. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. And we have to, please correct the record. I meant to vote no on that. I was looking at,
We can,
Can we recall the vote
we
then?
can recall the vote.
yeah, please recall the vote. My apologies. Even when I'm chair, Councilor Cartmel. Please display the vote.
We're still waiting on a couple votes. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote, please. And that is carried. For point 3, please.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. For point 4.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that is carried. Now for point 5.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that is carried. And for those keeping score at home, the totality of the mayor's motion has passed. And if you were curious, despite our calm demeanor, I did get a warning from my watch that my heart rate had spiked to 132 while sitting here. All right, Mr. Mayor, I pass the chair to you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Paquette, for conducting the proceeding of this meeting. Are there any? Here you go. Bylaws none, private reports none, motions pending none. We are adjourned.